So I want to share a few images and a little bit of information about Joe Biden's first wife, Nelia Hunter. And I just think that it's curious, and I have my own little wild theories about really what went down years ago, back when Joe Biden was running for senator. And I mean, he was sworn in um, beside his kid's hospital bed, and there was a picture of that car that's supposedly the accident that occurred. And there's all these media pictures and stuff showing Joe Biden next to his son's um, hospital beds, and he was sworn in the hospital. And I just think that it's just curious to me, myself personally, because when I try to find additional information about Amelia, and she was a teacher, just like Jill, right? And I think myself personally, she looks a lot like Jill, or Jill looks a lot like her. They look very similar, and I, you know, I just think that some of these characters and these people are introduced to the public in certain ways, and I think that they can use different tactics and tools to control certain people. And in case y'all didn't know, this is Jill Biden's ex-husband. There's this whole backstory of her ex-husband that claims that Joe kind of stole Jill from him. That they were seeing each other. It was kind of like an extramarital affair type of a thing. And then, while he's running for senator, his wife and daughter are killed in a car accident, and it gains him great amount of public sympathy. Okay. I think that they possibly use that as a control mechanism, you know, and myself personally, she looks an awful lot like Jill, or Jill looks an awful lot like her. And I just, I wouldn't put it past them myself personally. I know there's a headstone here where supposedly Nelia Hunter Biden and their daughter were buried, and all of that. But I wouldn't put it past them to have, taken the one character and offed her like in a soap opera, and then just brought her back as a different character with a different name. Because Jill has got a teaching degree, and Jill has got all of the same type of characteristics and personality as Nelia had, and the same type of a background as far as teaching and everything. And it just wouldn't surprise me if they didn't off this character here, because it gained him a lot of sympathy and it got him into a powerful position. Or possibly, you know, maybe they offed her because she was kind of a threat, because there was, like, from what I understand, she was kind of running his Senate and running his campaign. And she was kind of out there with a few ideas. And maybe they needed to get her out of the picture. And, that was one way of like killing a few birds with one stone, so to speak, by, eliminating her and then bringing in Jill, you know. And it is kind of curious, the backstory, on how they met. They claim that, they met and went on some kind of date or something like that. But yeah, here's a photo right here showing him being sworn in next to his son's hospital bed, which it seems professional, right? This type of media coverage right here. Look at all of the microphones and just the media coverage of it all. And I don't know. I'm just suspicious of the whole thing. And all I know for certain is that when this occurred, the supposed accident occurred, it gained him a lot of public sympathy, and it got him into a powerful seat and a position for him to do a lot of very interesting things. And, when you look up information about um, Jill Biden and her ex-husband, Bill Stevenson here, um, their backstory is really curious, because it takes an interesting turn where Stevenson actually kind of believes that he was kind of responsible for this whole thing with the whole Durst situation and the murder thing, because he claims that he had an affair as well, um, with Durst's wife shortly before she disappeared, and this whole murder thing and everything all came up. He talks about how he was a native of Delaware. He disclosed that he was a childhood friend with Kathy Durst, and that he and Kathy first met in the 1960s while spending summer near one another in the Poconos. And unfortunately, Kathy vanished in 1982. Um, but he goes on to talk about how he was betrayed by the Bidens, that Joe was his friend and Joe was his wife, and you know, the Bidens' love story is now legend, and how the couple found true love after the heartbreak of Joe losing his wife Nelia and infant daughter Naomi in a car crash in December of 1972. And they even put their tale of romance front and center at the Democratic National Convention. As Joe Biden tells the story, he first saw Jill's photo on an advertisement in Wilmington, Delaware in March of 1975. And his brother Frank, who knew the model from college, set Joe up on a blind date the following night, and they saw a movie together on the date, fell in love, and never looked back. But Stevenson, the founder of popular local rock music venue The Stone Balloon, says there's much more to the story, claiming that Jill and Joe's relationship actually started in 1974 when he was still married to Joe. And there's backstory and how he met her and all of the stuff. And, either way that you look at it, if this guy was actually truly married to the character, Jill, who is now married to Joe, or whether or not this was all just kind of a made up thing because of the connection with Durst and all of that. I mean, all of it can be very, very confusing on a certain level. But either way, really, that you look at it, whether it's, you know, these deep state operations going around and offing people, or, the premise of how these two supposedly met, according to that character, and he's given testimony to it, is that, they were cheating on each other pretty much, you know, and if it's one of those deals where they actually took this person out to control this person, it wouldn't surprise me. But what also wouldn't surprise me is if they orchestrated such a deep operation that they removed this particular character right here, but brought her back as a new character. And, she still remained in the picture behind the scenes. But this person here and this character was taken out of the picture. You know what I mean? I don't know. There's so much that our government and these agencies have done that it wouldn't surprise me either way. You know what I mean? And it's interesting that the Catholic Church actually called into question the Jill and Joe's Catholic wedding, and citing some interesting statistical things when it comes to Catholicism and marriage and Catholicism more specifically. It talks about prenuptial investigations, and it's interesting that the church that they were married in was a UN chapel. It was supposedly something associated with a UN chapel or chapel that apparently it's not actually a UN chapel, but it just so happens that a lot of people who are associated with the UN actually use that particular church. It says here that online searches for information on the UN chapel turns up an article about it in the New York Times from May of 1976. UN chapel weddings, ecumenical spirit. The chaplain was a Reverend Dr. Melvin Hawthorne, a minister of the United Methodist Church, and he says that the chapel does not have an actual relationship with the United Nations, but that many people associated with the UN do opt for his chapel. And in 1976, the chapel was the site of over 400 weddings, and 60% of which were couples of different faiths, and many of whom had run into snags elsewhere. So what might the snags have been for the devout Catholic Joe Biden and his fiancee? A number of permissions would have been needed. Okay, since Jill is not Catholic, permission to marry outside a church or oratory. Did they participate in a required prenuptial investigation, which should have uncovered that Jill was previously married in February 1970 and divorced in 1975, which is very curious because I don't know if you all know it, but marriage records are a public record, and I've done multiple searches, and I can't find a marriage certificate for Jill and Bill Stevenson. It just doesn't exist. There's no marriage certificate for a William Stevenson and a Jill Stevenson from 1970 in Delaware. It doesn't exist. So that's the part of it that I thought was kind of curious, where if this Stevenson character here is just a character that was created to create a backstory for the new Nelia, which is now known as Jill, you know, they could have staged that accident very easily, especially back then. People would have been very easily fooled into believing it. But just the whole backstory, and then this introduction of this character Stevenson, and he did this whole outing interview here with Daily Mail and everything like that.
Yeah, this is not a secret here in Delaware. Everybody knew she was involved with the campaign with me. I had a little bit of a disagreement with Caleb Boggs over helping me out when I felt that there was some corruption in Delaware. And Caleb Boggs told me.
So supposedly he felt there was a little bit of corruption going on there too. And that, and he goes on to talk about and claim that
I had to go pay Bruce Springsteen in advance in the beginning of August 1974 for him to show up at the Stone Balloon the following week. I asked her to go with me, and it shocked me when she said she had things to do.
And supposedly that was the time when he claims that Jill went and met with Joe, supposedly. And, that was what sparked it, which was not a blind date by no means. But anyway, just the introduction of this character into the storyline to help create more of a backstory, for this character here. There's so many things about her and the first wife, they just the resemblance, even the look. It wouldn't surprise me. It would not surprise me if it was just something that was completely staged just to get him the sympathy votes, just to get him into that position. And then they brought her back as a different character, gave her a whole profile, a whole new character and an image. And this guy is just a stupid actor because to me, I've read some of his other interviews and stuff that he's done, and he's just contradicted himself a few different times. And the whole connection with the whole Durst situation is kind of interesting, and how he claims that he could is possibly responsible for Kathy Durst disappearing, and that, him cheating with her and getting caught was just too much for the situation to handle, and she was, I don't know. It's just it's like a one of them soap operas once again, just another actress, that's playing her part possibly, and it could be. But I just I don't know. Just the fact that they played up the whole accident, and they played up this whole media thing of showing him, next to his son's hospital bed, and all of that, and then swearing in next to the hospital bed and all of that. It just I don't know. Our government and the CIA, FBI, and all these people in charge of the deep state and involved with the whole deep state operation and the whole shadow government, which does exist as far as I'm concerned. Um, they've been involved with some serious operations and stuff like that. I mean, I'm going to go into Operation Northwoods in the next video and talk a little bit about that, and talk about Operation Mongoose, and you know all of these operations and these crises that can be created ultimately lead to some objective or agenda of some kind. And by you know controlling politicians, they definitely can get things done against the will of the people. Even if they wanted to, they can create the illusion that someone is so freaking popular, and what's going on here right now in the US with the whole Kamala thing and all of that. There's like some serious propagandizing going on hard of, you know, and with our media and everything. And it just, this made for a good, media prop, him getting sworn in next to his son's hospital bed. You know what I mean? Sympathy can play a very big part, just as much as fear as well, you know. And if they took out his first wife and his daughter, he might definitely be fearful. And I don't know. And it's a deep theory. It's a very deep theory. It's a wild theory, but I just had to put that out there in case y'all aren't aware. Joe Biden was previously married, and they offed her. She was off. She, you know, disappeared. Just interesting to me anyway. Thanks for watching. Know that I appreciate you and that you matter very much to me. And there's definitely more to come if I can help it.
We predict the future. The best way to predict the future is to invent it.